Counselor Zethka adjusted her breathing apparatus as she floated through the observation chamber of the Galactic Council's monitoring station. The translucent walls offered a perfect view of the blue-green world below, where humanity continued their daily existence, completely unaware they were being watched by representatives of 47 different species. "Still fascinated by the mammals, I see," commented Counselor Vrex, his forearms manipulating a holographic display showing human population centers. The reptilian being's scales shifted from green to amber, indicating mild amusement. Zethka's tentacles curled thoughtfully around her data pad. "They remain the most intriguing species we've encountered in recent cycles. Their classification continues to puzzle our xenobiologists. The observation station had been monitoring Earth for 3 local years, ever since humanity had achieved basic spaceflight and landed on their moon. By Galactic Council standards, they were barely past the primitive stage, yet something about them had caught the attention of several council members." "Intriguing is one word for it," growled Counselor Thane, his massive ursine form hunched over a tactical display. "Concerning would be another. Have you reviewed their historical data files?" Zethka had indeed reviewed them. Extensively, the humans were classified as omnivores, which placed them in an unusual category among sapient species. Most civilized races were either herbivorous or had evolved past their carnivorous origins long before achieving consciousness complex enough for space travel. Humans, however, seem to maintain characteristics of both predator and prey species. "Their physiological markers are inconsistent," she mused aloud. "Forward-facing eyes like hunters, yet they form large social groups like herd animals. They show territorial behaviors but also demonstrate remarkable cooperation. Our scientists cannot agree on whether they evolved from predators or prey." Counselor Brix, a insectoid being whose compound eyes caught every spectrum of light, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. "Perhaps they evolved from both. Their planet seems to specialize in impossibilities." The monitoring station's main display activated, showing the current human specimen they'd been observing most closely. The individual was designated Human Subject 7749, though the beings on the planet below called him Marcus Chen. He was a typical example of their species working in what humans termed logistics coordination for a company that transported goods across their planet. Marcus appeared unremarkable by most standards, average height for his species at approximately 1.8 meters, standard bipedal locomotion, basic tool use consistent with their technological level. His daily routine involved sitting at a workstation, manipulating primitive computing devices, and occasionally communicating with other humans via electromagnetic transmissions. "This one shows no unusual characteristics," noted Vrex, studying the biometric readings. "Elevated stress hormones consistent with their typical work environment, but no aggressive markers." Zethka had chosen Marcus specifically because he appeared so ordinary. If humans truly possessed some hidden predatory nature, as some council members theorized, it should be observable even in their most mundane specimens. So far, 3 years of observation had yielded nothing remarkable. The human spent his days ensuring that cargo containers moved efficiently from one location to another. He consumed processed nutrients at regular intervals, engaged in social bonding with others of his species, and retreated to his dwelling unit each evening to rest. By all measurements, he lived the peaceful existence of an evolved herbivorous species. "Movement in Sector 7, announced the station's artificial intelligence in the melodic tones of the symphonic race who had programmed it. "Unknown vessels entering human territorial space." The main display shifted to show a section of space near Earth's solar system. 3 ships materialized from faster-than-light travel, their designs unfamiliar to the Council observers. Counselor Thane's fur bristled. "Those are Haxty configurations. What are those savages doing in this sector? Zethka felt her breathing apparatus constrict. The Haxt were one of the few species the Galactic Council had formally censured. Unlike most races that had evolved past their violent origins, the Haxt had embraced their predatory nature, becoming raiders and slavers who preyed upon primitive worlds. They must have detected the humans' recent space activity, Vrex observed, his scales shifting to deep purple with concern. A newly spacefaring species would be an attractive target. The Hackcast ships moved with purpose toward Earth, their intentions clear to anyone familiar with their methods. They would study the planet's defenses, determine the value of its resources and population, and then return with a full raiding fleet. "Should we intervene?" asked Brix, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Zethka's tentacles drooped. "The humans have not yet achieved interstellar capability. By Council law, they remain under non-interference protocols. We can observe, but we cannot act." It was the most frustrating aspect of their mission. The Council had strict rules about contact with primitive species. Until humanity developed faster-than-light travel independently, they were considered a protected but isolated species. No Council member could interfere with their natural development, even to prevent predation by species like the Hakkaxt. The 3 Hakkaxt ships reached Earth's outer solar system and began deploying sensor probes. Their technology was crude compared to Council standards, but far superior to humanity's primitive rocket-based systems. The humans would never detect the intrusion until it was too late. On the planet's surface, Marcus Chen continued his daily routine, unaware that his species had just been marked for extinction or slavery. He reviewed shipping manifests, communicated with transport operators, and scheduled cargo movements with the same dedication he showed every day. "The Haxt are conducting standard reconnaissance patterns," reported Thane, studying the tactical display. "Full planetary survey, population assessment, technology evaluation. They'll be finished within 6 local days." Zethka watched as probe data began streaming back to the HFY ships. Earth's population, approximately 8 billion humans. Primary settlements, scattered across 7 continental masses. Defensive capabilities, primitive kinetic weapons, basic chemical explosives, no energy shields, no faster-than-light vessels. To the HFY, humanity would appear to be ideal prey. Large population for slavery purposes, valuable resources, and no meaningful ability to resist or call for help. The humans didn't even know they were being evaluated for extinction. "I'm detecting anomalous readings from the primary observation subject," announced the station's AI. Zethka turned her attention back to Marcus Chen. The human was still at his workstation, still performing the same mundane tasks. But something had changed. His biometric readings showed elevated heart rate, increased adrenaline production, and heightened neural activity. "What could be causing this reaction?" wondered Vrex. "Our scans show no unusual stimuli in his immediate environment." The human's behavior remained outwardly normal, but his internal chemistry suggested a state of high alertness. It was as if some primal part of his brain had detected a threat that his conscious mind couldn't identify. Brix's compound eyes focused intently on the display. "Are we certain our observation methods are undetectable to their species?" "Completely certain," confirmed Zethka. "Our sensors operate on quantum frequencies their technology cannot perceive. There's no possible way they could detect our presence." Yet Marcus Chen continued displaying physiological signs of stress that went beyond his normal work environment. His primitive computer terminal showed normal logistics data, his communication devices carried routine business messages, and his physical surroundings remained unchanged. "Wait," said Thane, his voice carrying an unusual note of interest. "Expand the sensor range. Show me biometric data from other human population centers." The display zoomed out to encompass major human cities across the planet. Millions of data points appeared, each representing an individual human going about their daily activities. At first glance, everything appeared normal. Humans worked at their jobs, traveled in their mechanical vehicles, and engaged in social activities. But when the biometric overlay activated, a pattern emerged. Across the planet, in every major population center, humans were displaying elevated stress responses. It was subtle, barely detectable even with advanced sensors. But it was there. Heart rates slightly elevated, adrenaline production increased, neural activity heightened in regions associated with threat detection. "This is impossible," breathed Vrex, his scales shifting through several colors of confusion. "They cannot possibly be detecting the Haxt presence. The technology gap is too vast." Zethka stared at the readings, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was observing. 8 billion humans, scattered across an entire planet, were all simultaneously displaying signs of detecting a threat that their technology couldn't possibly perceive. "Perhaps it's coincidental," suggested Brix, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it himself. "Some form of solar activity affecting their brain chemistry?" "Negative," reported the AI after scanning local space. "Solar output remains within normal parameters. No electromagnetic anomalies detected. No natural phenomena that could account for this response." Marcus Chen stood up from his workstation, something he normally didn't do for another 2 hours, according to 3 years of behavioral data. He walked to the window of his office building and looked up at the sky. Though it was the middle of the day and there was nothing unusual visible to human eyes, across the planet, other humans were doing the same thing. Zethka felt a chill run through her aquatic physiology. "Show me global communication patterns. Are they coordinating this somehow?" The display shifted to show Earth's primitive communication networks. Email, telephone, internet traffic, broadcast media, all the methods humans use to share information. But there was no spike in activity, no unusual patterns, no indication that they were communicating with each other about any kind of threat. Yet somehow, they all knew. "Counselor," whispered Thane, his massive frame trembling slightly, "I think we need to reconsider our classification of this species." The Haxt ships continued their reconnaissance, unaware that every human on the planet below had somehow detected their presence, despite the technological impossibility of such detection. The raiders worked methodically, cataloging resources and defensive capabilities, planning for the return of their main fleet. They had no idea that 8 billion predators had just caught their scent. Marcus Chen remained at his window, his eyes scanning the empty sky with an intensity that made Zethka's breathing apparatus flutter with nervous energy. The human's biometric readings continued showing heightened alertness, as if every fiber of his being was preparing for something. Something was about to change, and for the first time in her career as a xenobiologist, Zethka wasn't sure she wanted to observe what happened next. The changes began 73 minutes after the Haxt ships completed their initial sensor sweep of Earth. Counselor Zethka watched in fascination as Marcus Chen abandoned his logistics workstation entirely, something he had never done in 3 years of observation. Instead of following his normal routine, the human began accessing different systems on his primitive computer network. "What is he researching?" asked Counselor Vrex, leaning closer to the display. The answer sent ripples of unease through Zethka's aquatic form. Marcus was pulling up databases related to military history, defensive strategies, and something humans called emergency preparedness protocols. His search patterns showed a focus on asymmetric warfare and resistance tactics against technologically superior forces. "This makes no logical sense," observed Counselor Brix, his compound eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. "His profession involves moving cargo containers. He has no military training in our records. Why would he suddenly begin researching combat tactics?" Across the planet, similar patterns were emerging. Humans in every profession, From food preparers to teachers to entertainers were abandoning their normal activities to research topics that seemed completely unrelated to their daily lives. Scientists were studying weapons development. Artists were examining psychological warfare techniques. Children were searching for information about guerrilla tactics. "It's as if their entire species is preparing for war," whispered Thane, his ursine features drawn with concern. "But they cannot possibly know what the Huxt are planning." The Huxt ships had moved into the outer asteroid belt, where they were conducting detailed scans of Earth's natural satellites and space debris. Their reconnaissance was methodical and professional, following standard protocols for evaluating primitive worlds. Based on their technology scans, humanity possessed no space-based weapons, no energy shields, and no faster-than-light capability. By every measurable standard, Earth was defenseless. Yet something fundamental had shifted in the human population. Zethka expanded the biometric monitoring to include stress hormone production, neural activity patterns, and metabolic rates. What she discovered defied every xenobiological theory she had studied. Human adrenaline production had increased by an average of 40% across the entire population. Their metabolic rates were accelerating, indicating preparation for extended physical exertion. Most remarkably, neural scans showed increased activity in brain regions associated with pattern recognition, tactical thinking, and what human scientists called fight-or-flight responses. 8 billion humans were simultaneously entering a state of psychological and physiological preparation for combat. Marcus Chen stood up from his computer and walked to a communication device. He activated it and began speaking in the calm, measured tones he used for his logistics work, but the content of his conversation made Zethka's breathing apparatus flutter with alarm. "Jenny, it's Marcus. I know this sounds crazy, but I need you to start moving the emergency supply caches we discussed last year." "Yes, I know we never actually discussed emergency supply caches. That's not the point right now. Trust me and do it anyway." The communication ended, and Marcus immediately activated the device again to contact another human. Then another. Within minutes, he was coordinating with dozens of individuals, discussing supply movements, personnel relocations, and strategic resource distribution using terminology that should have been completely foreign to a logistics coordinator. "Fascinating," breathed Briggs. "He's organizing defensive preparations using his existing professional network, but adapting it for military purposes. The efficiency is remarkable." Similar conversations were happening across the planet. Humans were leveraging their existing social and professional connections, transforming civilian infrastructure into military assets through nothing more than shared understanding and coordinated action. The HFY ships detected none of this activity. Their sensors were designed to identify weapons, shields, and spacecraft. They could not perceive that an entire civilization was reorganizing itself for war, using tools and methods that appeared completely peaceful to external observation. Zethka accessed the cultural databases to better understand what she was witnessing. Human history revealed a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. They had fought conflicts on every scale, from individual combat to planet-spanning wars involving hundreds of millions of participants. But more importantly, they had developed an unprecedented ability to transition from peaceful civilian life to organized military action in remarkably short time frames. Their historical records showed examples of entire populations mobilizing for war within days or even hours when faced with existential threats. "Counselor," announced the monitoring station's AI, "detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface." The display shifted to show electromagnetic readings from Earth's major cities. At first glance, the patterns appeared normal for a technological civilization, but closer analysis revealed something extraordinary. The humans had begun modifying their existing infrastructure. Power grids were being rerouted to create redundant systems that would be harder to disable. Communication networks were being reconfigured to maintain functionality even if primary nodes were destroyed. Transportation systems were being adapted to support rapid movement of personnel and resources. "They're hardening their entire civilization," observed Thane with growing amazement. "Without building a single new structure or manufacturing a single weapon, they're transforming their world into a fortress." Marcus Chen had left his office building and was walking through the city with purpose. His biometric readings showed continued high alertness, but also something new: focused determination. The scattered anxiety of the morning had crystallized into directed action. He entered a building that housed what humans called a hardware store, a commercial establishment that sold tools and materials for construction and repair. But Marcus wasn't shopping for typical consumer goods. He was selecting items that could serve dual purposes: construction materials that could become fortifications, chemical compounds that could become explosives, electronic components that could become communication devices. "The improvised weapons potential is extraordinary," noted Vrex, his scales shifting to deep amber with professional interest. "They're using their consumer technology as the foundation for military capabilities." Across the planet, millions of humans were engaged in similar activities. They were purchasing, requisitioning, or simply gathering materials that appeared innocuous to external observers but could be rapidly converted to defensive or offensive purposes. The Hackett ships completed their asteroid belt survey and began moving toward Earth's outer planets. Their reconnaissance would take another 4 local days to complete, after which they would return to their home system to report their findings and organize a raiding fleet. They remained completely unaware that their intended prey was preparing to fight back. Zethka studied the global coordination patterns with growing fascination. The humans weren't using advanced communication technology or centralized command structures. Instead, they were operating through what appeared to be intuitive understanding of shared objectives. How are they achieving such precise coordination? She wondered aloud. The answer became clear as she analyzed communication patterns more carefully. The humans were using their existing social networks, professional relationships, and cultural connections to distribute information and coordinate actions. But they weren't transmitting detailed instructions or strategic plans. Instead, they were sharing something far more efficient: shared understanding of the threat and mutual trust in collective response capabilities. Marcus Chen had returned to his logistics center, but his activities bore no resemblance to his previous work. Using the same computer systems and communication networks he had always used, he was now coordinating the movement of supplies and personnel across multiple continents. His cargo containers were being filled with materials that could support extended resistance operations. His transportation networks were being modified to support rapid deployment of defensive forces. His communication systems were being adapted to function as a military command network. "The transformation is remarkable," observed Brix. "They're converting their entire economic infrastructure to military purposes using nothing but modified procedures and repurposed equipment." The HFY ships had reached Jupiter's orbit and were conducting detailed scans of the gas giant's moons. Their sensors detected primitive mining operations and research stations, but nothing that posed any threat to their planned invasion. On Earth's surface, the human transformation continued accelerating. Manufacturing facilities that had produced consumer goods began retooling to create defensive equipment. Research institutions redirected their efforts toward developing countermeasures against energy weapons and faster-than-light travel. Educational systems began teaching skills related to survival, resistance, and asymmetric warfare. Most remarkably, the humans were doing all of this without panic or chaos. Their cities continued functioning normally to external observation. Commerce continued, transportation networks operated, and social systems remained stable. But beneath the surface, an entire civilization was preparing for war. "Counselor Zethka," said Thane quietly, "I believe we need to reconsider our non-interference protocols." Zethka's tentacles curled with conflicted emotions. The Council's laws were clear: no interference with primitive species, regardless of circumstances. But watching the humans prepare for what would almost certainly be a hopeless battle against technologically superior raiders created moral complications she hadn't anticipated. The HFYs possess energy weapons, force field technology, and faster-than-light vessels, she noted. Human courage and ingenuity may be admirable, but they cannot overcome such technological advantages. Yet even as she spoke, part of her wondered if that assessment was correct. The humans' response to an undetectable threat had already defied every scientific theory about primitive species. Their ability to coordinate planetary-scale defensive preparations using basic technology was unprecedented in Council records. Marcus Chen was back at his window, looking up at the sky again, but this time his expression was different. The scattered anxiety of the morning had been replaced by cold, calculating focus. He was no longer reacting to an unknown threat. He was preparing to hunt the hunters. Across the planet, 8 billion humans were making similar mental transitions. The prey species the Council had been observing for 3 years was revealing its true nature. They weren't prey at all. They were predators who had been pretending to be domesticated. The trap was sprung on the 4th day of HFY reconnaissance in a manner so subtle that Councillor Zethka almost missed it entirely. The HFY ships had completed their survey of the outer solar system and were moving inward to conduct close-range scans of Earth itself. Their 3 vessels approached with the casual confidence of apex predators who had never encountered meaningful resistance from primitive species. They had no way of knowing that their every movement had been tracked by 8 billion minds working in unconscious coordination. "The HFYs are beginning final approach," announced Councillor Thane, studying the tactical display with professional interest. "Standard invasion reconnaissance pattern. They'll establish orbital surveillance positions and conduct detailed planetary surveys." Zethka watched as Marcus Chen sat at his logistics workstation, apparently performing the same mundane cargo coordination tasks he had done for 3 years. But now she understood that appearances could be profoundly deceiving when it came to humanity. His computer screens showed shipping manifests and transportation schedules. But the cargo being moved was not commercial goods. Across the planet, using transportation networks that appeared completely civilian to external observation, humans were positioning defensive assets in precise locations. "The coordination continues to astound me," observed Councillor Vrex, his scales shifting through patterns of analytical fascination. "No centralized command structure, no advanced communication technology. Yet they're achieving strategic positioning that would challenge our most sophisticated military planners." The first HKZT ship entered Earth's gravitational field and began deploying sensor satellites. The raiders were following their standard protocol: establish surveillance network, identify valuable resources and population centers, locate potential sources of resistance. They found none. Earth's electromagnetic signature showed a typical primitive technological civilization. Radio transmissions carried entertainment broadcasts and commercial communications. Satellite networks supported basic navigation and communication services. Military installations were visible, but appeared to pose no threat to spacecraft-based attackers. The HXZT detected no energy weapons, no force field generators, no faster-than-light communication arrays. By every measure their sensors could evaluate, Earth remained helpless before their superior technology. But 8 billion humans knew exactly where the raiders were. "Fascinating," murmured Councillor Brix, his compound eyes tracking multiple data streams. "The humans are not attempting to hide their activities from the HKZ. They're simply conducting those activities in ways the raiders cannot recognize as threatening." Marcus Chen received a communication on his primitive device. The message appeared to be routine business correspondence. "Cargo shipment, 7749 Alpha, is ready for final delivery." All packages secured and transportation routes confirmed, awaiting authorization to proceed. But Zethka had learned to read the deeper patterns in human communication. This was not about cargo shipments. Marcus replied immediately. Authorization confirmed. Execute delivery schedule as planned. All transportation coordinators should implement Protocol 7 immediately. Across the planet, similar messages passed through human communication networks. To the HFY sensors, they appeared to be routine commercial and personal communications, but they were actually coordinating the activation of a planet-wide defensive strategy. The second HFY ship moved into position over Earth's largest population centers, its sensors probing for military installations and strategic resources. The ship's commander was probably satisfied with what he found. Billions of potential slaves, abundant natural resources, and no meaningful defenses. He had no way to detect that every human population center had become a carefully prepared killing ground. Movement detected in Sector 12, announced the monitoring station's AI. Large-scale human activity patterns shifting to Phase 3 configurations. Zethka enhanced the display resolution to observe individual human behavior. What she saw defied every assumption she had made about primitive species. The humans were not hiding. They were not fleeing. They were not displaying the panic responses typical of prey species facing technologically superior predators. Instead, they were moving with the coordinated precision of a pack-hunting strategy. Marcus Chen left his office building and walked calmly through the city streets. Around him, thousands of other humans were moving with similar purpose. To casual observation, it appeared to be normal urban activity. People walking to work, traveling between locations, conducting daily business. But the biometric readings told a different story. Every human in the city was operating in a state of controlled predatory focus. Heart rates elevated but steady, stress hormones optimized for sustained action, neural activity concentrated in regions associated with tactical thinking and target acquisition. "They're not preparing to be victims," whispered Vrex, his scales pale with realization. "They're preparing to hunt." The third Haxed ship descended to the lower atmosphere, its sensors conducting detailed scans of Earth's surface infrastructure. The ship was massive compared to human technology, its hull armored against primitive weapons, its energy shields capable of deflecting anything Earth's militaries could deploy. But it was not prepared for what humanity had actually planned. Marcus Chen had reached his destination, a seemingly ordinary commercial building in the city center. But Zethka's enhanced sensors revealed that the building's basement contained equipment that had been carefully assembled from components scattered across hundreds of civilian facilities. The humans had built something their primitive technology should not have been capable of creating. "That's impossible," breathed Thane, studying the sensor readings. "They've constructed some form of directed energy projector using modified industrial equipment. The power source appears to be their entire city's electrical grid?" Across the planet, similar installations were powering up simultaneously. Humans had somehow converted their civilian infrastructure into weapons platforms without building a single device that would register as military technology to external sensors. The first HFY ship detected energy signatures building on the planet's surface, but the readings made no sense to their threat assessment systems. The humans were generating massive amounts of electromagnetic energy, but not in configurations that resembled known weapons technology. By the time the Hackist realized what was happening, it was too late. The attack came from 8,000 locations simultaneously. Every major human population center released precisely coordinated bursts of electromagnetic energy directly at the HFY ships. The beams were not sophisticated by galactic standards, but they were powerful enough to overload unshielded electronics and numerous enough to overwhelm defensive systems designed to handle single-source attacks. The first HFY ship lost primary power and began drifting in orbit. The second ship's navigation systems failed, sending it tumbling toward Earth's atmosphere. The third ship, still in the lower atmosphere, crashed into the ocean with tremendous force, but the humans were not finished. "By the eternal depths," gasped Zethka as her sensors registered new activity. "They're launching recovery operations." Across Earth's oceans, human naval vessels were converging on the crash site of the third HFY ship. But these were not military vessels, as the Council understood them. They were converted civilian craft, fishing boats, cargo ships, research vessels, even recreational watercraft. The humans had somehow transformed their entire maritime infrastructure into a recovery fleet. Marcus Chen was no longer in the city. Using transportation networks that appeared to be routine civilian travel, he had reached a coastal area where humans were coordinating salvage operations. His logistics expertise was being applied to the systematic recovery and analysis of advanced alien technology. "The efficiency is extraordinary," observed Brix with professional admiration. "They're treating crashed starships like any other transportation accident, using existing emergency response procedures to secure and analyze technology centuries beyond their current capabilities." The two surviving Akusti ships were attempting to restore power and communications, but they faced a new problem. Every move they made was being tracked by billions of human eyes, and every human seemed to instinctively understand how to coordinate responses to aerial threats. The planet's surface erupted with electromagnetic pulses targeting the disabled ships. But these were not random attacks. The humans were systematically targeting specific ship systems. First communications to prevent distress calls, then navigation to prevent escape, then life support to force evacuation. "They're not trying to destroy the ships," realized Vrex with dawning horror. "They're trying to capture them intact." The Predator reflex had fully activated. Zethka watched in fascination as the Haxt crews, faced with systematically failing ship systems, began evacuating to the planet's surface. It was exactly what the humans had been maneuvering them toward. The moment HFY personnel entered Earth's atmosphere, they discovered that an entire planet had been prepared to receive them. Landing sites that appeared safe were actually carefully prepared capture zones. Terrain that seemed suitable for defensive positions was actually designed to funnel the raiders into predetermined areas. Marcus Chen's communication device activated with updates from around the planet. In his calm, professional voice, he coordinated the systematic capture of technologically advanced alien raiders using methods that were apparently based on human techniques for managing difficult logistics situations. "Packages secured in Zones 7, 12, and 23, he reported to someone. "Transportation to analysis facilities proceeding on schedule. No significant complications encountered." The HKZ, who had spent generations raiding primitive worlds, found themselves completely outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as helpless prey. Within 18 hours of beginning their final approach to Earth, all three Haxt ships had been disabled, their crews captured, and their technology secured for human analysis. Not a single human had been killed. "Counselor Zethka," said Thane quietly, "I believe we owe humanity a formal apology." Zethka's breathing apparatus struggled to process what she had witnessed. The species they had classified as primitive omnivores with unclear evolutionary origins had demonstrated predatory capabilities that exceeded anything in Council records. "They never stopped being hunters," she realized aloud. "They just learned to hunt things other than food." The humans had identified a threat their technology couldn't detect, coordinated a planetary defense using civilian infrastructure, captured advanced alien technology intact, and done it all while maintaining the appearance of a peaceful primitive civilization. "The classification protocols will need to be completely revised," observed Vrex, his scales cycling through colors of professional embarrassment. "We fundamentally misunderstood their nature." Marcus Chen was back at his workstation, entering data into his logistics systems. But now Zethka understood that he was coordinating the analysis and integration of captured HFY technology into humanity's industrial base. In the span of a single week, humans had gone from a primitive species limited to their home solar system to a civilization in possession of faster-than-light travel capabilities and advanced energy weapons. "Counselor," announced the monitoring station's AI, "detecting new energy signatures from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be reverse engineering the captured faster-than-light drive systems." Zethka felt a profound chill in her aquatic core. Humanity had not only defended itself against technologically superior raiders, it had done so in a way that immediately elevated its own capabilities to galactic standards. The Predator reflex, once activated, was apparently very difficult to turn off. "I believe," said Thane with careful diplomatic precision, "it may be time to consider humanity for Galactic Council membership." Zethka nodded slowly, her tentacles curling with nervous energy. The alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. A species of 8 billion apex predators discovering the rest of the galaxy without proper diplomatic introduction. Looking down at the blue-green world below, she realized the Council's observation mission had been successful in ways they never intended. They had been watching humanity develop, waiting for signs of readiness for galactic contact. They had just received the clearest possible indication that humanity was ready. Whether the galaxy was ready for humanity remained an entirely different question.